Hello! Okay, welcome to my channel. Ashley here with Tolton Art. I am a full-time artist and YouTuber. This entire series that's coming up, I am so excited for because if you've seen any of my other videos, you already know this. If you're new here, I come from an artistic family. Both my great-grandfather and grandfather were famous artists. However, I did not grow up in a family that was directly excited about art. They liked art not as a career. So I did the traditional route. I went to become a veterinarian in college, and yeah, very scientific. Ended up becoming a professional equestrian, all the things. I was not doing art full time or even had it as a potential for a career. Never really studied it. I got into AP art in high school, but it was just because I was one of those kids, one of the gifted kids, right? That everyone knew could draw really well, and I did it all the time on my homework. Sorry, teachers. And that class was never really taught art. It gave us like some exercises, but really it was just prompt based, where they were like, this is your prompt and now create it how you want. So there wasn't really much teaching going on. I never really had an art education. When I got to the point in my life where I made the decision that I wanted to try the art thing and I wanted to try to make it full time, I ran into the very real roadblock of skill set across the board. Marketing, business. I've owned and operated a few businesses, so the business aspect I'm pretty comfortable with, but marketing and the actual artistic skills themselves, I was definitely lacking in. When I was a kid, definitely the gifted kid, but that only gets you so far, because at some point, when I got to 30 years old, I was now competing with people who the amount of time that I spent studying horse training and veterinary science, they have been studying art. And that was a very real thing to confront, with the self-awareness and self-reflection, realizing that I needed to catch up, essentially. I also ran into the difficulty of like, well, okay, how do you do this? How do you teach yourself to paint? I live in the middle of nowhere in a town of 130 people. That's like, we are an hour away from the closest grocery store. So there's no art school. There's no nighttime classes around me where I can go pay someone to help me. It definitely was gonna come down to me teaching myself. So that's how this entire series has come to fruition, was because I have spent so much time working so hard to get better and find a curriculum, find a workflow, find the tools that I need to help make myself the best artist I can be. And I figured I would videotape this entire journey for you, because I know I'm not alone. There are plenty of you out there that never went to art school, that are looking for a curriculum, how to teach yourself, how to improve. And so we're literally going to start from ground level. In this one, we are going to do basic drawing. Like, we are starting from drawing, moving into painting. Now, I'm also still painting. My job is painting. So I'm still creating artwork. What we're backtracking on is kind of what I have been working on the last 2 years, and kind of what got me up to the point that I'm at. But we're gonna revisit these basics, start there, and then carry on. I will say earlier this year, 2024, I did go back to art school and kind of attend some of these online courses, atelier programs, to really buckle down. I'm a very academic-minded individual, so having some sort of academic expectation and being in the academic realm feeds my soul. It is how I want to learn. I want to be a very skilled draftsman and have that show in all of my artwork. So that alone is very, very important to me, and was definitely a part of, my journey. That doesn't have to be your journey. You can skip any amount of the videos to come if you don't feel like it applies to you, but we are definitely going to be going through a trajectory that is a little atelier focused, not necessarily only human based. It's just going to be kind of drawing based. How do you draw really well? How do we build up those skills? And then slowly transitioning into the art aspect of it. So we are going to go through this together. This is the first class. We're going to start with drawing and kind of go from there. Let's talk about some of the things that you're going to need. A pencil, an eraser, and a pencil sharpener. So with the pencil sharpener, you can either have a traditional one, which a lot of people don't recommend if you're just starting and you don't know how into this you want to be, then I would say start with one like this. Oftentimes what you'll find people use is a razor, and they will shave away part of their pencils. Okay, an eraser. This is just a basic one. I love this one. It's such a good, just basic eraser. However, you can also get one of the kneadable erasers. Those work really well. But if you're just looking for a cheap start, just get a basic eraser and then worry about that later. And then we have a pencil. So you'll see this one's a 2B. If you were to only get a few pencils, I would say get an HB, a 4B, and an 8B. I love the 4B to draw because it's soft enough that it doesn't really leave hard indentations in the paper. B is its blackness, H is hardness. So the HB is like your typical school yellow pencil. Then as you get into the Bs, it just gets softer and then darker. Again, this is a 2B, but ideally I would be drawing with a 4B just because it's so versatile. You can put really light marks down, and if you need to, you can put dark marks. Oftentimes you hear people say to start with an HB. That's fine if you want to. Again, you're gonna see me using a 2B or a 4B. The other thing you're gonna need is some paper. I'm working on 17 by 20 something. It's toned, as you can tell. Neither is super important right now. You don't need a size this big. You can work in a sketchbook. Sketchbooks work fine. It can be white. However, I love the tone canvas for what's gonna come later. That's the basic starter. As kind of new supplies are needed, I'll show you. But for now, let's just pretend it is your first time. You maybe don't have all of the things and you just wanna get started. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're just gonna get started. You could even use a mechanical pencil if you wanted to. The trick is just don't push down too hard yet. No matter what pencil you're using, don't poke in and push hard and down. It will leave a hard line in the paper. We're looking for soft marks first. But as we go through exercises, you'll see we kind of like work through some of this. The last thing that I will talk about is kind of how to hold your pencil. You may be tempted to hold it like this. In some instances, that's fine, or like this. You'll see, I definitely still hold my pencil like that. What you're gonna see a lot of people tell you is to extend your arm and move, keep your elbow like rigid and move from kind of your shoulder and move in big sweeping motions. This definitely comes in handy a bit more when you're doing, let's say, if we were doing a figure on this entire page and you needed to like connect everything and make sure that it kind of like flowed together. For right now, I'm just gonna break this up into sections, and oftentimes you're gonna see me holding it pretty high up on the pencil, like a normal writing utensil. So one of the first exercises that I want you to do is make lines. So the point of this is just to get a feel for your pencil. I want you to practice, like pretend like there's like dots here, and I want you to do parallel marks to each other. in doing this, I want you to see what happens when you press hard. What happens when you press hard and slow, right? You can see like going slow it gets a little bit wonky, but it's darker. What happens if I go light and fast? What happens if I go light and slow? Pretty accurate. But I want you to just get a feel of what it feels like to move through your pencil. Go fast, go choppy. You know, this is just to like kind of build that hand-eye coordination and see what different marks. What happens when you start heavy and get light? You know, all these different ways that you can hold and maneuver your pencil. From there, also doing diagonals. And try to keep them, as I'm doing this, I'm trying to keep the spacing the same. So you're training your hand-eye coordination and your feel for what ends up feeling good. It's harder to be accurate when I push harder, definitely easier when I push light and like get more movement. And so these are just things that we're using as a warm-up, as a basic to get the feel for your pencil and movement and pressure and all of the things. You know, we're gonna do some of these like C curves. And every single one of these makes up a very, very crucial part of artwork, because basically all we're doing is lines. That's all a drawing is lines and eventually value added into it and shapes. And these are kind of the most common forms of how you make these shapes. And so again, try from top to bottom, try bottom to top, try pressing hard, try pressing lightly and sketchy, and do the other way, do that way. Like, this is just to get movement, again, while thinking about spacing and orientation, getting a feel for putting pencil to paper. And then the final, so we have the line, diagonal, C curve, and then we have an S curve. So that's like, you'll notice these are quite a bit harder to get perfect and continuous, but they're very important. Ultimately, when you end up getting into portraiture, animals, all of that stuff, you start to get things like, that's the line of a body, you know? Using these S curves and C curves, and a spine could be here like that. You know, that's how you get the beginning of a back. That's how you get the beginning of a human torso, right? All of those things. I know that don't analyze this too. I'm doing this so quickly, but essentially that's what it leads to. The exercise is just getting used to drawing these lines and training yourself on the accuracy and the feel, and just kind of committing to those single strokes. And as your first exercise, I want you to do this for a few days, move on to the next video that comes after. And regardless, every single day I would warm up with just a few exercises like this to get you going.